Okay, pre-calc students, here's what we're doing today. This is the unit circle that we looked at last week, and I've already posted a couple of videos about this, and I hope you're watching them because this is how we're going to proceed for the rest of the semester. So we're going to today define a couple of functions based on these points in the unit circle. One of the functions is going to be called the sine, and the other one is going to be called the cosine. And we are going to find the sine of an angle or the cosine of an angle. And the way we're going to do that is this. If I want to know, for example, the cosine of 45 degrees, I'm going to find 45 degrees. I'm going to figure out where it intersects the unit circle, right there. There's the 45-degree angle. There's the point on the unit circle that's 45 degrees. It's also pi over 4. So I could also be finding the cosine of pi over 4 right now, because remember, those are just two different ways to measure the same angle, 45 degrees, pi over 4 radians. I want to know the coordinates of that point. What are the x and the y at that point? And if I know the x and the y at that point, then I will know the cosine of 45 degrees and the sine of 45 degrees. It actually turns out, and we'll talk about this more in depth, that the cosine will be whatever this x coordinate is, and the sine will be whatever this y coordinate is. And we're going to learn that for every single point on this unit circle, these special points, not every point, the special points that we've talked about before, the 30s, the 60s, the 45s, and so on around the circle. The pi's over 6s, over 4s, pi's over 3s, pi's over 2s. We're going to talk about all of those places on the unit circle and what their coordinates are. But that's an awful lot of points. So we're going to make it a little easier. And what we're actually going to do is, instead of learning all those, you might get dizzy here. I'm going to turn the camera. Instead of learning all those, we're really only going to need to know all of those values just over in the first quadrant. Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about the values in the first quadrant. And there's really no way I would have expected you to be able to figure these out. Well, I mean, some of the things you learned in high school geometry might have helped you, but it's probably been a minute since you had high school geometry. So let's look at some of the points. Some of these are easy. Some of them are easy. For example, right over here, this is 1 over and 0 up. This point is 1, 0. That's the x and y coordinate of this actual point on the unit circle. 1, 0. This point up here is 1 up, 0 over. Remember, this is a unit circle, so the radius is 1. So each of these little grid marks is not 1. 1 is all the way over here because it's the unit circle. Now, these other points are a little harder to find. So I'm just going to tell you what they are right now, and then I'm going to give you a quick way to remember them. And then I'm going to, in the next video, tell you how to take these numbers and move them all around the unit circle so you can remember all 4 quadrants. This is just the first quadrant. It's the easiest one to remember, actually, because in the first quadrant, all the x's are positive and all the y's are positive. So pi over 4 is 45 degrees. It's right along here, and the x and the y are the same, and the pi over 4 points are the square root of 2 over 2 for the x coordinate and the square root of 2 over 2 for the y coordinate. Pi over 3 and pi over 6, well, the pi over 6, notice pi over 6 is right here. That's halfway up to 1. The y coordinate here is halfway up to 1. The y coordinate for pi over 6 is actually 1/2. And the x coordinate, I'm just going to tell you, is square root of 3 over 2. And you switch these for pi over 3. The x coordinate is 1/2. And the y coordinate is square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so That's an awful lot to remember, but you're just going to have to work at it and try to remember those.